Again, a reminder that this is being recorded, and I think everybody's already muted, but if you haven't muted your mic, please go ahead and do so. Um, we'll go through the context for the 2023 competition today here in the agenda, and we will also go through technical remarks from our co-chairs. We'll make a few programmatic remarks, and then we'll open it up to some questions from you guys, and then we'll wrap things up. So, just so that you guys can get prepared as we're talking here in the very beginning of the session, one way to ask a question today is to raise your hand in WebEx and find that command in the software. We can call on you and you can turn on your camera and turn on your mic and ask your question verbally, or alternatively, you can put it in the chat. And if you have any questions that you want to go ahead and pose in the chat to get the conversation rolling, you can go ahead and do so at any time. So whenever we're finished answering questions or at 4:30 p.m., we'll end this call, whichever one comes first, and we'll wrap things up. So we'll make a few introductions. As I said, my name is Janice Miller. I am the program lead from the National Institute of Aerospace based in Hampton, Virginia. We oversee a number of competitions on behalf of NASA, and we're pleased to be participating in the Gateways to Blue Skies for the second year. Jen Eberly is our program coordinator. She is running the slides today behind the scenes. And Stacy Dees is our program manager, and Shelly Spears is our education and outreach director. If selected as a finalist, you may see any or all of these faces at the forum. So best to become familiar with us. On to the NASA sponsors. Today you'll be hearing from Stephen Holtz, the Blue Skies program co-chair, and also at NASA Langley Research Center, and Andy Provenza, who is also a Blue Skies co-chair at NASA's Glenn Research Center. Kaushik Datta and Mina Capuccio are also on the University Innovation Project, which is the sponsoring entity for this program. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Stephen and Andy. And I think Mina, if you want to say a few words about yourself and the University Innovation Project.
Sure, yeah. So most of us are on the call. I think all of us from the UI University Innovation Project management team are here on the call, but we are the ones that work on the NASA mission side from the aeronautics groups to put together this competition through the NIA. So we're excited that we're getting even more participation this year than last year. We were happy with the way last year turned out, and we look forward to another exciting year in our second year of Blue Skies. So I'm Stephen Holtz. I'm the Blue Skies creator / co-chair this year, and I work at NASA Langley Research Center, and I'm the assistant project manager for the University Innovation Project.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Andy Provenza. I'm the deputy project manager of technology for the University Innovation Project. Happy to be co-chairing this event this year. My interests and passions are in zero emissions aviation, and this project fits right into that swim lane. A recent article that just saw yesterday on CNN talking about a partnership between Howard University and HBCU and the United States Air Force. Lloyd Austin said, "Our changing world needs creativity and ideas of students." And that's exactly what we're looking for here. We are looking for your ideas in this topic. We'll talk technically about this topic shortly. And again, welcome to the Q&A, and hoping that between the four of us, we can answer, more than four of us, the four of us on the UI staff and the NIA team can answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Andy. Mina or Kaushik, do you want to say anything?
Yes. Hi, I'm Mina Capuccio. I'm the Deputy Project Manager for University Innovation. And I was actually a co-chair in last year's competition, and it was very exciting to see all the great new ideas from students on the topic that we covered last year on Airports for Tomorrow. And I'm looking forward to seeing all the great ideas for clean energy sources.
Thank you, Mina. Giving a chance for Kaushik in case he wants to, but we can move on too. All right, Jen, go ahead to the next slide. We'll give Stephen and Andy a chance to talk a little bit about the competition and make some remarks from the technical point of view.
Sure, yeah. So I'm not sure how many people were with us during the first Q&A, so some of this material might look pretty similar for those that were, but that's okay. Just to remind anyone or to educate anyone on what the main purpose of this competition is. We're really looking to encourage diverse multidisciplinary teams of college students to explore and contribute systems level ideas on specific source to flight life cycle for future zero emissions aviation propulsion energy sources. So we want to know, based on your research, what you see as the vision for the zero emissions future for the aviation industry. And we really do want to see creative ideas. All right, anything's up for grabs as long as it's not jet fuel and sustainable aviation fuel. Although I don't think it might be getting ahead of myself on that one. I think it's probably a different slide. But we do really want to see energy sources that are less explored, but that have propulsion potential for the majority of flights, and that's for flights that are longer than 2 hours, which make up most of our aviation industry. But so, like I said, we don't want to see the SAFs or sustainable aviation fuel. And you can find a pretty specific definition of that on the DOE website, which is provided here on the slide. I know sometimes we get questions about what exactly is considered a sustainable aviation fuel or SAF. But like I said, I think the DOE does a pretty good job of defining what that is. And if you have any questions, you can always ask for our clarification on something you might be thinking about. But we really want your analysis to begin with, right? How do you get this energy source or fuel? So how is it, sourced or extracted, refined, whatever that is? And then how does it get all the way from that initial point to getting on board the aircraft, being ready to be consumed as an energy source for aviation, right? So people will think about transportation, people will think about storage, people will think about safety in all of those areas. Those are all things that we're looking for you to look into and present to us.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephen. And just as a note, as Stephen said, the constraints are minimal in this competition, as most of you probably already know at this point from reading the competition guidelines. So as you're reading through any of the previous Q&A materials and the frequently asked questions, you'll see repeatedly that it's up to your team to make and outline assumptions and justify those assumptions based on research informing your vision of the future of aviation. So if you have a question along those lines, that may be the answer, but we'll wait and see. Now, Andy, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. You see the topic that we have, and you wonder, where does this really come from? Well, it could be that a part of your research you saw that the combustion gases that come out of the back of an airplane's turbine engine can cause harm to the environment. There's carbon dioxide, there's NOx emissions, there's sulfur, there's soot, there's contrails from water formation because of the presence of soot and other particles in the atmosphere. All of these things do harm in certain ways. Obviously, CO2 is a highlight. We're looking at reducing CO2 emissions, but we're also looking hard at the contrail formations and the other emissions that I mentioned. So we're looking here, certainly in a lot of our other activities in UI and at NASA, on alternative ways to power aircraft that don't affect the thermal balance of the Earth in a negative way, or affect the oceans with CO2 being stored and the other things that are harmful with CO2, in addition, or especially what they do to the thermal balance as well. So we're looking to you for new ideas. Stephen mentions that we don't, reused jet fuel, SAFs are being looked at, which can get us to a point where we could consider net zero carbon emissions. So we could remove through the processing the carbon dioxide that's emitted through the processes to create the jet fuel or this sustainable aviation fuel, and then put the CO2 into the environment and consider it a zero balance. We're really looking beyond that. We want to look at other types of energy sources that don't do any harm at all. So something beyond the next generation and what the world is looking to with the SAF fuels. So, without giving any ideas in any directions, there's many forms of molecules that have energy in them. There's gases you can burn, there's liquids, there's solids, there's ways to generate electricity and store it on aircraft, and even other things if you look up energy sources in a Google search. So that kind of gives you an idea why we came up with this topic, looking to students to form teams and develop their own ideas. Short of what I already said, I'm going to try to avoid giving any specific examples that you could look at. And I know a lot of you have already done some research and have submitted NOIs, and we're excited to see those. So I think I'm going to stop there, Janice, if that's okay.
That's perfect.
Okay.
Thank you, Andy. Great. Unless there's anything else from the UI team, we'll move on to the next slide, and I will make a few programmatic remarks. So again, this may be repeat for those of you who are on the first call, but we wanted to emphasize a few things to keep in mind as you're preparing your proposals. So a change from those who might be coming back from 2022 is that faculty advisors must sign your proposal to be valid. So this is a new requirement, and it is something that should appear on the cover page of your proposal. So I just wanted to make that clear as we're moving forward. Also, that's a little bit different from 2023 as our evaluation and scoring structure has changed. So finalists will be selected from the proposal pool, which is the first stage of scoring. And at that point, scoring enters a clean slate, which will begin with the research paper and infographic and ends with the presentation at the forum. So what that does mean is that our finalists, once selected, you can and need to provide updates between the proposal and final research paper and presentation stage. So make sure you're planning to keep working on those things. And as always, the competition guidelines are the single most important document in this competition. They will guide what you submit, how you submit it, and how it's judged. So make sure you refer to those very frequently. As a note, we have not had to do this yet this year, but occasionally there will be updates to the document. If there's anything substantial, we will let the teams know that we have submitted an NOI, and they'll also appear in the change log. Again, it's not something we anticipate, but I wanted to highlight that just in case. And then over on the right-hand side of your screen, you're able to see the timeline coming up. So as I mentioned in the beginning of this call, we are nearly a month away from our proposal and video deadline. If you have any questions between today's call and the proposal submission date, please feel free to email us at blueskies@nianet.org, or our team is available on Monday through Friday from 9 to 5 Eastern time. So make sure, especially as the proposal deadline is approaching, that you allow ample time for our team to either pass the question along to the University Innovation Project team or answer it ourselves, and for your team to actually implement that response. So definitely try to think ahead and get those questions into us as needed, because that deadline is, I believe, on a Tuesday. So you may be wanting to get some answers on some days that we might not be in the office. So finalist selections will be made on March 28th, and finalists will have, like I said, the next few months to complete their final research paper, infographic, and develop a presentation. And then, of course, we're looking forward to having our finalists at the Blue Skies Forum in Cleveland, June 1st and 2nd this coming summer. Our next slide talks a little bit about existing resources that your teams have. So as I mentioned before, we did hold a Q&A session in November, and I believe many of you were on that call. So there is a video and audio recording from that on our website. There's a summary document of questions asked, and there's the chart deck from that. There's also a series of frequently asked questions that we've posted on the website, and this particular Q&A session will also be posted on there with associated documents and recordings. So make sure you check those resources as you're moving forward. With that, we're going to open it up to the call so that folks can ask their questions. So as I said before, if you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand in WebEx. We'll ask you to turn on your camera and turn on your mic and ask your question, or you can feel free to type questions into the chat. And I do already see one, so thank you, Seth, for getting us rolling. His question is, could you confirm that the final research paper and infographic are due on March 28th, the same day as the selection notifications? It's listed as May 24th on the guideline document. If we have that date incorrect on the previous slide, I am very sorry. It is May 14th is that deadline. All right, we've got a question from Daphne. Can future or speculative technologies be considered as a part of this effort, or is it just present day technologies? I'm going to turn that over to Andy and Stephen.
Yeah, I need to read the question again. Let's see. Can future speculative technologies be considered as part of this effort, or it's just present day technologies? So, of course, you can consider future or speculative technologies, but there is a portion of the paper, and I believe a number of points that are assigned to your capability to be able to justify the choice of both the fuel that or energy source that you're choosing and the technologies that you're looking to use, right? I think a lot of it depends on the research that you do. So if you have research that you think can justify that this energy source is viable, and that you have research to justify the choices you make for, how it's going to get from one place to the end point safely and sustainably, then you are welcome to use that. We're really looking to you to, right, show us that you've done your research and to show us that the choices that you're making are backed up by, potentially valid, hopefully valid peer-reviewed papers in science.
Great, thank you, Stephen. And actually, that question from Daphne reminds me of something that I was going to ask and pose to you and Andy during this session. And it's that question of the quest for innovation and the balance with feasibility, and how those two items will be judged. And I think you kind of touched on it in terms of justification, but I was wondering if you could kind of speak to that as an elaboration on Daphne's question.
You're saying the trade-off between feasibility and innovation? There's always going to be a trade-off, right? Sometimes the things that might be seen as more innovative might have less out there, or might be seen as riskier. And I think it is important to note, right, what technologies are at what TRL or technology readiness level when you talk about them, in your paper or in your presentations, so that people know where we are now with the technologies that you're talking about. And hopefully the part of your paper is talking about how we're going to get to where we need to go on those technologies by the time that we're looking at. I'm not sure that answered the whole question, but I know we do have, right? I think when I can't remember exactly. I don't have in front of me the rubric. It does help point out, right, how we're putting points to what area, and I don't remember if there was an innovation section, but there's definitely points for justifications and Janice, you might be able to help recall that without it in front of me.
I can pull it up and I can take a look and we can revisit it. While I'm pulling that up, I know Gavin has a question. So go
Hello,
ahead.
Gavin Hart, University of Pennsylvania. Good to see so many of Blue Sky's faces again. I had a quick question on the supply chain aspect of the paper. And are you looking for us to address multiple avenues of how a particular fuel could be created? Or are we supposed to, in our assumptions, say this is how it's going to be made and go on from there?
I think it's completely reasonable to say that, hey, these are some potential, there are multiple ways that people are looking at creating it. These might be the pluses and minuses. And then maybe you might give an assessment saying this might be the most viable one, or we see this as the most viable one based on, those pluses and minuses. So if that makes sense.
Understood. Thank you.
Revisiting the question from before, in terms of the scoring, we do have 20 points assigned to technical merit and rationale, so sound justification, as we've been talking about, and 10 points assigned to innovation. So definitely weighted on the technical merit with a piece of innovation to that.
If I could add to that question about today's technology or future, with respect to aviation, definitely today's technology is burning jet fuel, and there's lots of emissions that we want to get rid of. So we certainly don't want that. Now, with respect to today's technology for taking your idea for an energy source all the way to the point where it's at the airport and gets onto the aircraft, that likely there is a good chance that technology and how to create the fuel or the energy source and how to transport it and all that might not exist. And if you develop a concept for how to do that, even if, say, it looks a little bit challenging or kind of we do a little head scratch. Well, how would that work? The fact that you're thinking about it and developing your own idea will really go a long way. That since that technology doesn't exist, if you come up with something and to you it looks feasible, then you will do well in the scoring for that idea, in my opinion.
Thank you, Andy. That's valuable feedback for the folks on this call. Looks like Seth has a question.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I was wondering, it seems like this type of proposal is a little bit unique. I was wondering if any of you had any ideas for resources that we could look at as far as existing proposals, or especially any type of NASA document that might provide some inspiration for either formatting or maybe just some useful visuals or types of graphics that we might be able to integrate into our proposals.
So there's
Yeah, go ahead,
plenty of
Stephen.
there's plenty of papers out there. I'm sure you can research. Most universities have access to a number of different databases for research papers. So I know NASA puts all our papers out for free. I believe that it's an NTRS. I can link in the chat just in case. I believe that's the website to get any NASA papers from. And there's plenty of published papers out there that you should be able to access as well. For actual information on what research is out there, what's going on. If you're talking about photos, especially in the presentation part, if you get into the final groups, we don't expect you necessarily to make up pictures of airplanes that don't exist yet. We always expect that if you get your picture from somewhere, then you might cite the source, right? Obviously, we expect people to make their infographics. But there's, I think, and I'm not sure if I'm misunderstanding the question. You made it sound like, where do you get the information from if it's something that's pretty unique?
I'm wondering more about formatting. So, um, like for example, like for the timeline that we create, if there are any pre-existing resources that we could look to as far as, this is how NASA likes their timelines to look,
Yeah.
or
So,
this is
so
useful
that's
for the technology readiness level. Like if there's anything that
so
we could look for that.
things like TRL, you can look up what the different TRL levels mean. Um, we're a little bit more open-ended in the competition. It's not like the NASA. It's not like going to the NASA Systems Engineering Handbook. We don't expect you to do something like that and follow the NASA format on that. Um, I think there's ways that students like you can come up to present a lot of this information that is probably better than a lot of the ways people at NASA present that information. So I probably wouldn't tell you to go look at how NASA necessarily presents this information, because I know when we watched the finalist groups, a lot of their work that you can probably even see on online from the Blue Skies page from last year. Um, their work was probably presented better than some of the presentations I've ever seen in my career. So I don't expect you to follow a certain format. I think you can use tools available and your creativity to make this understandable and visually appealing in a way that we don't necessarily use in our own day-to-day work.
Yep. So Seth, I was going to, Stephen hit the nail on the head that if you would like to see examples from last year, our 2022 final papers are on there. And you can kind of see how different teams approach that in their papers. You can also look at the live streams to see the presentations as they were presented live at Langley. And just to reiterate what Stephen said, there is a thrust and a power behind the communication that the next generation is bringing into concepts like this. And so I think that's honestly your creativity is part of the competition. And that kind of feeds into the infographic that finalist teams will be pulling together. So I think certainly the best way that you can think of to convey your timeline and your concepts is going to be the most effective in this competition.
Okay, cool. That's good to hear. And I didn't know that the 2022 papers were available, so I'll definitely check those out. Can I ask a second question, kind of along those same lines?
Sure.
Um, like you were saying, the best way that we can convey the information is best. Um, our team has been talking about ideas for the video, and we have sort of talked over an idea that's maybe a little bit more fun and lighthearted than the actual proposal itself, which will obviously be, pretty regimented. But we wanted to ask before we do anything like that, we don't want to come off as unprofessional. Okay, thank you, Stacy. Yeah, just wanted to make sure that you guys wouldn't mind that kind of presentation.
Yeah, it's first of all, the video is, while we do encourage you to do a good job on it, it's not worth a lot of points. We really just want to see who the team members are and what your ideas are, and then pretty much the rest of that is up to you. Um, so if you want to be creative, we last year we saw anything from people presenting a couple PowerPoint slides to people outside at an airport, because last year's topic was about airports, right? And so they were out in an airport introducing their team, and it's kind of whatever you want with that, as long as you check the boxes on kind of what we're looking for. So no expectations on a very, very serious, very formal PowerPoint.
Okay, very
Yeah,
helpful. Thank you.
have fun. Yeah, have fun with it. Part of this should be, interacting with your fellow classmates and teammates, and really enjoying the whole process of this.
Yeah, as Stacy said, we love fun and lighthearted. So it sets the tone. Thank you for thinking along those lines.
Yeah, of course. We'll have fun with it.
Thank you, Seth. Are there any other questions out there? Gavin, go ahead.
Yes, I had another quick one. Are we allowed an appendix in the paper? And if so, does it count towards the total page count?
Yes, you are allowed an appendix, and similar to last year, it does not.
Okay.
However, you do need to make sure that anything that appears in the appendix is not critical to your overall concept, because judges are not required to read past the published page count.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for the appendix, right? If anyone has any calculations that they're doing or things like that that they want to, if they want to show their work or show things like that, it's meant to be there for, we don't expect to see things like that in the main paper, but right, we don't want you to think it's just a way to get extra room, if that makes sense.
And actually, we've given specific guidelines, and I'll put them in the chat as well too. But we gave guidelines about the appendices and indicated that they're supposed to be used for references and calculations only.
Thank you.
Of course.
Jorge.
So I actually had a question regarding the calculation. As far as calculations go, would you want to be able to see that in the actual report portion, like the 5 to 7 page part of the report, or are the calculations, as far as formatting goes, is that just supposed to be left in the appendices?
I think you don't want to waste your valuable page count on the calculations, but if you do calculations that are influencing your paper, I think it's certainly worth saying, oh, this decision was made based on the calculations found in, Appendix X, and you would label it, somehow, kind of like you do with graphs and tables. But we don't need to see the math taking up your short page numbers. So.
Okay. And then I kind of wanted to ask a follow-up question regarding page numbers as well. In the guidelines, it definitely refers to using pictures and graphics and stuff like that as well. I just wanted to make sure that does actually count towards the page count as well, correct?
That does. Yes, that is correct. Right. I mean, we want to emphasize that this paper is a high-level systems view of, right, a specific process or journey of this energy source. So we don't expect you to be getting too deep into the diagram of a pump or something, but you have to be a little bit specific on choosing how you're going to fill the pages that you have, right? And kind of keep that high level.
That said, I think the advice that I might give you might be if a picture or an image or a graphic can convey the concept better and faster than a series of words and sentences and paragraphs, then you might choose to use that instead of outlining it verbally. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely.
Just a little bit of advice to help save as much space as you can in your proposal, because we realize that 5 to 7 pages is hard to narrow down all the information that you probably want to convey. And so we found that that's just one way, by using tables or charts or graphs. Sometimes teams can save a little bit of space on the paper by using those instead. So just a little piece of advice.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. And then if I could ask one last question. And then so regarding cost analysis, I know in the guidelines as well, it specifies that this isn't necessarily a cost analysis type of report. So with that in mind, would a small portion of cost analysis be okay to include? And also, if it's just like, say, an absurd number or a super small number, is that something that should be included, or kind of like how we got to those cost points?
I think if you're doing calculations, again, that could go in the appendices, but I would definitely take a look at, if you're looking at costing, a certain service or a certain type of thing, definitely look at what exists for the analog systems or services currently. Um, you can always email people in the industry or send phone calls, but that may not get you the right results. But we definitely want you to be reasonable for what something can cost, right? If something is going to have an astronomical cost that makes it non-viable, that might be harder to justify.
I think the emphasis is on feasibility, right? So certainly that plays into the conversation of feasibility for your technology.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Jorge's question actually begs another item that came up in the Q&A session number 1, which is that there are a lot of considerations to make in the short page limit that this report has. So there's technical, social, political, financial, and environmental factors. So the question from last time, and I was hoping that you, Stephen, and Andy might be able to elaborate on this a little bit more, is how much emphasis should we place on each of these in the proposal? And the answer from last time was technology and the environment are the focus of the competition. So the other items, social, political, and financial, are sort of ancillary that may be relevant and can be mentioned in the justification. But do you all want to elaborate a little bit on that? Because there are a lot that we did mention in the competition guidelines.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that was we just put it out there for people to think about. They were things that we didn't necessarily ask for last time, but that people did bring up in their papers and presentations saying, hey, if you make this decision, it might drive, it could drive an increase or a decrease in let's say in this example, passengers use, and therefore the amount of fuel you're going to use, or right, if we all of a sudden had a really good train network in the United States, which may probably not happen anytime soon, that might decrease the air traffic from what we think we're going to be using, and then you won't need as much fuel, and so certain things might be more viable, right? So there's certain chain reactions that might happen, in the next 27 years, which is the time frame we're looking at, right? That could affect factors that you base your decisions off of.
Thank you. Let us know if anyone has a follow-up question on that. And are there any other questions out there? While we're waiting, the question of creativity pops up, and sort of looking ahead at the infographic, do you all want to discuss a little bit about how you see that from a judging perspective as different from a conference poster, and what the judges want to see, being that it is going to be a more visual, less technical way to present information?
Yeah, I would definitely. I know a lot of people are used to making conference posters, like research posters. That's really not what we're looking for. I do encourage everyone not only to look at what we received last year, but go on Google, type in infographic. You'll get a slew of things that are appropriate types of what we're looking for in formatting, right? The whole point of an infographic is that it's really a simplified way to express the whole of your idea. Most of it is visual. Sometimes there's, pictures or graphs or snippets about what is on there that you can talk to really showcase all of your idea in a cohesive journey on one page. So, if there's a really technical term, try to find a more simple word if you're going to use words on there to tell your story, or if you're using that kind of infographic. It's really something that anyone should be able to look at and understand without you being there, and really understand, hey, this is what they're proposing, this is why they're proposing, right? These are the benefits, things like that is what we want to see on there. But you shouldn't have large blocks of text like on a science fair poster or a research presentation.
Yep, and it is geared toward the less technical audience to explain the concept in a more visual format. Thanks, Stephen. Any other questions out there? Or Andy, did you have something to say?
I was just gonna, I guess it was a question to you, and I think I already know the answers. There are the infographics from last year's teams available to look at to just kind of get a feel, and
Yep.
especially the teams that made it to the finals and one piece of the competition. Yeah, okay. Yep.
Yes. And for anyone looking for that link, Kaushik actually provided it in the chat. I will repeat it for anyone who might not be able to see it. But that 2022 record is up, and there's a variety of things that you can click in that webpage. All right. Any other questions? Going once, going twice? Or any other comments from Stephen or Andy?
No, just looking forward to it.
We are. And I think with that, we will go ahead and wrap up. So Jen, if you don't mind popping to the next slide. As I said before, if you have any other questions, please feel free to email us at blueskies@nianet.org. We will post this recording of this Q&A session number 2 on the frequently asked questions page for everyone to see, along with a summary. And feel free to visit that page as often as you'd like, as well as, of course, the competition guidelines. And we're very, very, very excited to see what comes in next month. We wish you all the best of luck as you do this. And again, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And yeah, we look forward to it. Thank you all.
Thank you.